between Wendover and Lake Point, and that's the Nevada state line. Both directions of I-80, no high-profile vehicles are allowed to travel due to the high winds in the area. UDOT traffic alert. Plan ahead for delays this Labor Day weekend on Utah highways, especially Highway 6 in Spanish Fork Canyon and I-15 in Salt Lake and Davis counties. Avoid travel during the evening commute. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, windy today. There's a chance of thunderstorms, of course, this afternoon. We can see heavy rainfall in some spots. Also a significant risk of flash flooding in southern Utah. Today's high 85 with a high of 75 expected on Labor Day. And right now we're at 75 degrees, mostly cloudy and windy at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM at KSLNewsRadio.com. Your all-day companion for news.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, traditionally, the United States of America celebrates Constitution Day on September 17th, but Utah has decided that one day is not enough to reflect on the Constitution and our founding principles and those who founded the nation. So what's the answer? What's the path for September? Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, it is time to think again about what we do in the month of September, and today is September 1st, and it marks the beginning of American Founders and Constitution Month here in the state of Utah. School has started, people are back and busy with life, but I want to challenge all of us today to reflect just a little deeper this month about the founding fathers, all of those who participated in bringing forth a new nation, and of course the Constitution in the middle of all of that. And so thrilled to have joining us on the program someone who has been in the middle of a lot of that conversation, someone I always look to who understands the founding of this nation in a very unique way, Tad Callister. And Tad, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It's very nice to be with you, Boyd, and all the good you do. Thank you.
And you have two wonderful books, America's Choice, America's Destiny, are just some of the writings you've done over the years that are so profound in terms of the founding of this nation. And so this year, the legislature passed something about America's Founders and Constitution Month. Tell us just a little bit about how we got to yesterday. It was a great announcement up at the Capitol and what we should be looking for and thinking about as we roll into September.
Well, thank you. The legislature did pass a bill that stated September would be American Founders and Constitution Month. It passed the Senate 25-0, and I think the House was 72-2. And its purpose was to encourage Utah citizens to engage in patriotic events during the month, to rekindle a spirit of patriotism, love for the Founding Fathers and the Constitution, and encourage us to become better informed on the Constitution. And yesterday, the governor issued a proclamation endorsing that legislation and inviting us also to study the Constitution, to share it with our family and friends so that we'll be better informed citizens. So that's what's taken place so far, with many other events and activities to take place the rest of the month.
So important. I actually want to go to some of the things that are included in that bill, because I just think hearing this is important for all of us. The bill encourages all civic, fraternal, and religious organizations and public and private educational institutions to recognize and observe this occasion through appropriate programs, teaching, meetings, services, or celebrations in which state, county, and local governmental officials are invited to participate. And I know there's a lot of things that are going to be coming. And one of the things that I know you've been very interested in and is going to be a fascinating part of all of this is the whole idea of constitutional fitness. So tell us about that part of the program.
Well, Jen Brown, who's the president of Why I Love America, the campaign and nonprofit, was instrumental in meeting with the State Board of Education, along with myself and others, and they decided it was time to help educate our students better on the Constitution. So they instituted a constitutional fitness or excellence program that has standards for the students, grades kindergarten through grade 5, that each year, if they meet certain standards by engaging in certain patriotic and learning activities, they'll get an award. And then the goal is that next year, grades 6 through 8, they'll do a similar thing. And then finally, the following year, 9th through 12th, to help our state become very well informed on the Constitution, so we can be better informed citizens on legislation and voting for candidates.
So important. And part of what you expressed yesterday up at the state capitol in what was just a stunning and stirring visual with young students there, incredible music, just incredible flags flying there inside of the Capitol. You talked about the concern, and you actually pointed to a Wall Street Journal poll talking about patriotism and where that is. Give us a quick description of that, and then let's get to the antidote of how we solve that. Thank
you. The Wall Street Journal did take a survey and found in 1998 that 70% of the population considered patriotism a high priority in their life. 25 years later, this year in 2023, that had declined to 38% of the population who felt that patriotism was a high priority in their lives. So one of our goals is that from this Why I Love America campaign is to reverse that trend and increase patriotism in the U.S., an understanding of the Constitution, and a recognition of God's hand in the origin and his needed hand in the destiny of our country.
And that's so vital. I often say it in the context of what we ignore or forget, our children may never know, and what our children don't know, our grandchildren are not likely to possess. And I know that's something that you have focused on for many years now in terms of making sure we don't forget, that we do remember, especially those founding principles. Give us something that we ought to be thinking about as we roll into September that maybe could spark a conversation, whether it's around the dinner table or across the back fence or waiting in line at the grocery store.
Well, I think there's several things. One is there's a booklet that was prepared by Joy and Rob Jones entitled Why I Love America, directed at 4th and 5th graders, that's designed to give people a better understanding of the Constitution in very simple terms that could be used to discuss around the dinner table or in family gatherings. That can be obtained on our website, whyiloveamerica.org. I think certainly just reading the Constitution, portions of it, and discussing it with family. What's the difference between the rights the states have versus the federal government has? I think just reading about some of the lives of the founding fathers, it surprises me when you read the primary sources, honestly, how different it is than when you read the revisionist historians. And I happen to do that with Columbus and got a whole different feeling for Columbus than reading the revisionist historians. So I think reading about some of the sacrifices that the founding fathers made for our country is just stirring and stirring. And I think Ted Stewart, as a federal judge, talked about, you probably know that quote, and so I'll let you say it.
No, in fact, I was just thinking of his book, Without America, and just how he played that out in terms of we can criticize the flaws and the mistakes and the things of the past of the country, but were it not for America, there's a whole host of other things that don't turn out very well in the world history, not just American history.
I think that's true. I think the Savior gave you a good test. He said, by their fruits ye shall know them. And if the fruits are good, the tree is good. And if people are enjoying the fruits of liberty, the fruits of free speech, free press, free assembly, it's somewhat hypocritical to say the tree from which they came, the founding fathers, is not good. If the fruit's good, the tree was good.
Yeah. Such great perspective. And Ted, we appreciate you joining us as we kick off September and what is going to be an amazing month here in the state of Utah. And I hope it spreads across the country, that this is a time to celebrate America's founders, the Constitution for an entire month here in the state of Utah. I think those are conversations we all need to be having. We talk about the polarization in the country. The answer is not just better political conversations. It's getting to those principles and the fruits that you were just describing. Tad, thanks so much for joining us today. We look forward to having you back as we roll through the month, an important one here in the state of Utah.
Thank you. You're doing a terrific work. Appreciate it.
All right. So many important things to think about there. And again, yesterday, Governor Cox was part of a big event up at the Capitol, kicking off American Founders and Constitution Month here in the state of Utah. All kind of great resources that are going on. This constitutional fitness. Sidney Dixon, of course, unveiled the Constitutional Fitness Award as part of the events yesterday. There was extraordinary music. Former Governor Herbert spoke as well. This great laboratory of democracy that we have in our states and federalism. And there's a lot to think about, and there's a lot to do during this month, and we hope you lean in. We think there are some amazing opportunities there. You can check out some of the resources that Tad mentioned. whyiloveamerica.org has some great things, so simple. Your kids can understand it, your teenagers will get it, and it even helps us adults to figure out what it's really all about. So it's time to lean in. It is here in the state of Utah as we go through September, American Founders and Constitution Month. That's worth thinking about.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. Just one more day until BYU's Big 12 debut.
He's going to go 20, 15, 10, 5, touchdown!
Saturday night, the Cougars sink their claws into the Sam Houston Bearcats. KSL pregame starts Saturday at 6. And then Sunday morning, get a total Big 12 roundup. The all-new First and 12. First and 12. Sunday 10 to noon on Utah's legacy home of the Cougars. KSL News Radio.
Her name is Becky Edwards, and she's the common-sense conservative we need in Congress. A proven fiscal conservative, Becky Edwards is unafraid to stand up to communist China or the big spenders in Washington to end the inflation that's hurting Utah families. Becky Edwards will defend our freedoms and support term limits like she did here in Utah. Becky Edwards, ready to make Washington work the Utah way.
I'm Becky Edwards, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Becky Edwards for Congress.
The Utah RV Super Show, the premier RV event of the year, is back at Mountain America Expo, Thursday, September 14th through Sunday, September 17th. Come see the new 2024 models and special closeout pricing on all 2023 models. Bring a can of food for the Utah Food Bank and get $1 off per can, up to half off adult admission. Unplug from distractions and plug into your family at the Utah RV Super Show. Discount passes at UtahRVSupershow.com.
Can we talk about something difficult to discuss? Are you going through a difficult financial time? You have equity in your home, but nobody can help. I'm Jason Erskine with American Home Loans, and we have created the Bridge Loan Program to use your equity regardless of your credit at this time. The Bridge Loan can be used to pay debts, collections, IRS liens, divorce settlement, or just simply improve your property. Give us a call at 801-262-2221. This loan creates a bridge between now and a much brighter future. During COVID, one of our clients had over $85,000 on credit cards. Their scores were too low to borrow on their home. We were able to save them $2,000 a month, and after 8 months, they qualified for a conventional loan and improved their situation. Look, the consultation is free. Please let us see what we can do for you. Call 801-262-2221. That's 801-262-2221, or go to AmericanHomeLoans.com. That's AmericanHomeLoans.com.
NMLS 245422, Equal Housing Lender.
Hey guys, are you over 30? Let's talk about testosterone and performance. Your testosterone can decline at an average of 1 to 2% a year after you turn 30. And Revive Men's Health have been experts at treating men with low testosterone and ED since 2011. We're the clinic guys come to when their current treatment isn't working. They have a complicated medical condition, or they're just not happy with their performance. We love what we do and the patients we care for. You can ask our patients. We did, and we have a 99% patient satisfaction rate this year. Our patients even tell us we're more affordable than their insurance deductibles and copays. Let's get to the bottom of your issues and fix them. That's what we do, and we do it really well. Book your T-Check and exam today Call 801-263-7777. That's 801-263-7777. Or send us a private message at revivemenshealth.com.
Getting help with plumbing repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, travel is restricted for high-profile vehicles in both directions on Interstate 80 between Lake Point and the Nevada state line at Wendover. Second, a body was found earlier today at Battle Creek Canyon in Pleasant Grove. No word yet on the person's identity or the cause of death. Third, people on Florida's Gulf Coast getting a much better idea of the damage done by Hurricane Idalia. Right now, 75 degrees, mostly cloudy and windy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
You may not have heard the name Muhammad Yunus, but he won the Nobel Peace Prize back in 2006, and his work's been an incredible force for good in the world and right here in the state of Utah. Now he's being targeted by the government of his home country, Bangladesh, and may face prison time for crimes he didn't commit. So the question we want to get to is, who is Yunus? What has he done? Why does it matter? And what can we do here in the state of Utah to be helpful? And we turn, of course, to Jay Evenson, the opinion editor at Deseret News, who has a brilliant piece on Muhammad Yunus and that story. And Jay, as always, thanks for making time for us.
Oh, thanks for having me, Boyd.
So for our listeners who haven't been following a little closely, this is someone who won the Nobel Peace Prize back in 2006. But tell us why and what is it that he's been doing that's made such a difference in the world?
Well, he developed a program known as microcredit. He was a young economics graduate, got a PhD in economics in the early 1980s. And he noticed that if you could loan the very poorest of the poor people in his home country of Bangladesh, even $10, $20, and help them to start their own business. Some of them would buy a goat, some would buy supplies for, say, weaving furniture, that kind of thing, out of straw. They would pay back that loan, and you could incrementally give them bigger loans until they actually could lift themselves out of poverty. He formed a bank called the Grameen Bank, and the sole purpose of this bank was to give these microloans to the poorest of poor people, and he would organize them into support groups, and he would have helpers there to help them form these businesses and to make it on their own. There's some dramatic stories of people who not only lifted themselves out of poverty, but whose children are going to college and who've made just an incredible difference in their lives. So, and he's since started a lot of other different businesses with the aim in mind of lifting people up and helping them. That's the main reason why he won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2006.
Yeah, and I want to go to your personal story. I love that you began your piece at Deseret.com talking about that, because I think the metaphor and the message, I think, is just so powerful in terms of how we should be looking at those who find themselves in poverty or those who are struggling around the world. And just, it's a good way for all of us, I think, to maybe think again about the way we approach some of those issues.
Well, the first time I met him was in 1997 when he came to our Deseret News editorial board. He had just had cataract surgery that morning at Altaview Hospital by Dr. Scott Leckman, who had brought him to visit us. I didn't know who he was, this unassuming Bangladeshi man, and he had his eyes he was wearing dark glasses, and he just had this surgery. And as he sat there, his sight gradually returned to him in a more vivid and vibrant way than he had it in many, many years. If anyone out there has had cataract surgery, I've heard this story over and over again about how it's just amazing how you can see so much better than you could before. I use that as a metaphor and said it was kind of the way he was removing the fog of despair from the eyes of many people who once lived among mud and squalor. And I really have come to know that through the years as I've met with him several times and talked to him. He's never taken any profit from any of his businesses. and he doesn't have ownership in them anymore. It's kind of interesting. You talk about the Bangladeshi government being after him. They decided about 10 years ago that he was too old to run a bank, and so the government took the bank away from him. And the minister who took it away from him was in his 70s at the time, and he said, "No, you can't own a bank if you're older than 60." So I mentioned one time earlier that irony is lost on autocrats.
Yes,
and,
always.
But he has done tremendous good, and he's been to Utah many times. I heard him speak to business people at the Alpha Club one time, and he was talking to them about being motivated by more than just money. Now, he of course understands capitalism. He uses those principles in helping people come out of poverty. But he says, if I make money for myself, I'm happy. If I make money, if I make other people happy, I'm super happy. And you can have both. And he tries to teach American business people that, you can make a profit. But what if you make just a little bit less profit and you turn your attention to the very poorest among us and try to lift them up? Then you not only have a profit, but then you're a lot happier yourself.
Yeah, we often talk about it in the context of so often we look at those in poverty, and I always use the phrase, often the autocrats and the bureaucrats look at them as liabilities to be managed rather than as human assets with, infinite potential, divine potential. And it seems to me that is really Muhammad Yunus's secret sauce, that he doesn't see people in poverty or squalor, as you said. He sees them with immense opportunity, and sometimes all it takes is a little micro loan or a little just a single opportunity to do something that begins that upward climb and that upward mobility.
Yeah, little things. He started a yogurt company, and he made the containers of yogurt edible as well. But he made sure there were ingredients, there were things in the yogurt that would help to cure night blindness, because night blindness is caused by a lack of proper nutrition, and it's a big problem in Bangladesh. When it gets dark, people just can't see, and he's greatly helped the health of these people. This yogurt was highly affordable. He started an affordable telecommunications company to give cell phones to people over there. He's just done a number of things, and a lot of what he's done has been copied by people in other countries as well to try to help people out of poverty. And it's too bad that not everybody sees this as a good thing. Some people rely on people being poor and desperate in order to maintain power.
Yeah, and that's the ultimate tragedy, is when you have those in power who don't want that upward mobility, don't want people to be empowered on their own, so that they are dependent on a state or a national government to provide everything. Before I let you go, Jay, just the last minute, anything Utahns can do now to help someone who's clearly had an impact here in the state and all around the world?
Well, there are a couple of things, I think. Now, first of all, there was a letter sent to the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, signed by more than 170 global leaders, including Nobel laureates, urging that she stop her campaign against him. Certainly, Utahns could do that, but I think we need to let our congressional delegation know that they should step up and be more vocal about this. There have been a number of members of Congress who have signed letters to Bangladesh urging the Prime Minister to back off, and the Secretary of State has said that anybody who interferes with the free elections in Bangladesh, which are coming up and which is kind of the impetus for what's going on there, will be denied visas to come to the United States, which is important for a lot of the ruling class over there who like to send their children here. Yeah. So, just urging our congressional delegation to get more involved, I think could have a big impact.
Fantastic. Great writing, great perspective, as always. Jay Evenson's the opinion editor at the Deseret News. You can check out the story at Deseret.com. Jay, thanks for bringing this one to light and keeping it on our radar. If ever there was someone who followed the motto that we end this show with every day, doing something to make a difference. That is exactly what Muhammad Yunus has been doing, and a great story and one we can all follow. Thanks so much for joining us, Jay.
Thank you, Boyd.
All right, we'll step aside for some bottom-of-the-hour news. Of course, it is the 1st of September. September is Suicide Awareness Month. It's never been more important than now to get involved, engage in the conversation. We're going to have that conversation with our friend Gainalyn Condi coming up next, so stick around. We'll be right back.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top local story this hour. We've had some strong winds, 55 miles an hour and stronger along Interstate 80 this afternoon. And that's prompted authorities to temporarily ban high-profile vehicles along Interstate 80. And that ban covers a 100-mile stretch of I-80 from Wendover to Lake Point. Utah's seen fewer days where air quality was out of the healthy range this year. Bo Call with the Utah Division of Air Quality says he thinks fewer wildfires and the big spring runoff played a part. So does people taking action.
If somebody chooses to not drive or to carpool or stay home and work from home, then that's just that much less pollutant that's getting out on the, into our atmosphere.
While there are still 3 months to go, as it stands numbers-wise, this is one of the better air quality years we've had since 2019. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. Floridians pitching in, helping those in the areas hit hardest by Hurricane Idalia. Today, this from Governor Ron DeSantis saying it's an all-hands-on-deck situation.
Folks from all over the state that have surged to this area to help, whether it's on our urban search and rescue teams, whether it's sheriff's deputies from other parts of the state, police officers, firefighters, you name it. It's really been a team effort.
Power was out to about 500,000 customers after the storm, slowly being restored with the help of utility crews from across the country. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up 122 points as we near the close of trading today. The NASDAQ, though, down just a bit, about 7 points right now. And our KSL weather looks like we're going to see some thunderstorms by the time the day is done. That's next. KSL News Time, 1:31.
We have enough people running around Broadcast House at 4 in the morning to field a football team.
Producers, reporters, the traffic team, and us.
This is Tim and Amanda.
Join us each morning from 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
I'm Bruce Huff, and I'm running for Congress. I spent the last 45 years working with others, building successful businesses, and employing over 1,000 Utahns. Today, Washington, D.C. is broken. More than ever, we need an innovator who can create solutions and fight the entrenched administrative state. I'm a full-time conservative. I'm the only candidate in the race that voted for Donald Trump in 2020. I'll fight to balance the budget, secure the border, and protect parental rights. I'm pro-life and pro-Second Amendment. I'll do everything possible to move power away from D.C. back to the states. I'll fight to give states more control by pushing for unrestricted block grants that could put an additional $30,000 into every K-12 classroom in Utah. I'll protect the most vulnerable in society by creating tougher penalties for child sex traffickers. I'll take Utah's values of faith, self-reliance, and hard work to Washington. I'm Bruce Huff, and I humbly ask for your vote.
Paid for by friends of Bruce Huff.
Whether you own a local business or a global one, you're always looking for ways to position your operation to create opportunities and move on them faster. With Bank of America, you get access to experts, award-winning insights, and business solutions so powerful, you'll make every move matter, locally and globally. Visit bankofamerica.com/banking for business to learn more. What would you like the power to do? Copyright 2023 Bank of America, N.A.
Nothing slows my little girl down, except a stuffy nose.
Mommy.
That's why I use Sinex Children's Saline from Vicks. Sinex instantly clears mucus in everyday stuffy little noses with a gentle, ultra-fine mist designed for kids. Just Sinex? Breathe. Her stuffy nose is gone for now. And so is she.
Sinex Children's Saline. Sinex, breathe. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
Visit Serenoni Luxury Blanket Warehouse Sale Wednesday, September 6th at Orion Event Center in Linden. Save on the world's softest blankets for babies to adults. Get huge discounts on the best gifts ever.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Granite Credit Union's new Dividend Plus checking account. Here's Ricky Meese.
Weather is definitely playing a role on your drive. We have restrictions in place. All high-profile vehicles are restricted from traveling both directions of I-80 between Lake Point and the Nevada state line. In Salt Lake County, rain coming down, those winds kicking up, and you have spots of slowing scattered from Midvale at 7200 south into Lehigh due to wet driving conditions. Also an accident called out at Redwood Road and 4800 south. Fill up your bucket list in Box Elder County. History, recreation, and wildlife, along with excellent dining and shopping, await you. Find out more at visitboxeldercounty.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, windy today, chance of thunderstorms this afternoon. Heavy rainfall could happen in some areas. There's a significant risk of flash flooding in southern Utah as well. Today's high 85 with a high of 75 expected on Labor Day. Right now, 73 degrees, mostly cloudy and windy at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. Your all-day companion for news.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
September is Suicide Prevention Month, and so thrilled to have in studio with us today our good friend Gaynelyn Condi, author, speaker, advocate, steward, and just someone who makes it happen in the world. And Gaynelyn, we're so glad to have you in for this crucial conversation. When we talk about suicide and suicide prevention, I just don't know anybody anywhere who hasn't been touched by this in some way.
It's true, and the reality is it is an issue for all of us, so we need to start at the beginning, and that is don't assume it's a demographic that you're not responsible for or not involved in. It's all of us, and especially post-COVID. I kind of feel like mental health became the issue for all of us across the world, and yet I want to be sensitive. There are those that chronic issue with mental health dynamics have hit maybe a higher peak in their life or are more necessary for some interventions that are crucial. But the reality is I wake up every day and check in with my mental health. It's one of the things I have a stewardship over. And when we normalize it as a health topic, I think right there we destigmatize.
Yeah, and I want to dig into that further with talking about normalizing that in all of our conversations with our children, our grandchildren, with each other, with our colleagues at work. Because it can be one of those compartmentalized. That's something other people have to deal with, not me or not my family.
Right.
And so let's talk about some ways we can normalize it.
Well, I mean, this is kind of my little tip for if you have teenagers that always give you the answer of "I'm fine."
Fine. Yeah.
Fine.
The one word fine.
How was school today? Fine. How are you? Fine. You know, how do you just jump into a mental health conversation and instead of making phone the enemy, start a group text with your family, including your teens and your single adults and, you know, your married kids and say quick mental health check-in, use an emoji. And that expands the conversation right there because there's a lot more emojis than just happy, sad, and mad.
Right.
My kids have schooled me a few times. I'm like, you're using that emoji inappropriately. We do not need the laughing tear one for everything. Everything is not that happy, Mom. And so I would just suggest doing that as kind of the first step, and then you can follow it up with, especially if you get an emoji that's alarming of some sort or you don't understand, it starts the conversation.
Gets the questions rolling. Yeah, so important.
Yeah.
And I want to take a flip of that. I always love our conversations because you get me thinking on 27 different levels because there's a positive angle to that as well. And sometimes, you know, our kids come home and they have had a good day or they got the A or they won the game.
And
or
we don't talk about it.
And sometimes we just say, good job, way to go, hey, that's great. But often we don't ask well, how did you feel about that? Or, man, what were you thinking as you scored that goal in the soccer game? That can be an important part of creating space for all mental health, good, bad, and different.
Well, listen, I do channel Boyd Matheson sometimes in my head. When I'm in conversations, I'm thinking, what would be the follow-up here? Because let's just be honest that when it's someone we're married to or we've birthed, there's a little bit more investment and trigger potential, right?
Always trigger potential.
Yeah, I mean, I can have a much more open, vulnerable conversation with you than sometimes someone that I feel very invested and responsible eternally with, you know. And so I think those follow-up questions are so helpful, but if you tend to get stopped because it's someone that you're more emotionally triggered by or invested in, it can be hard. So listen to Boyd Matheson and get some follow-up question tips and put them in the phone to kind of get people to share beyond. I think I think one of my favorite ones is tell me more about that.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
And that can go for negative situations or positive situations.
Yeah, and it always changes the focus from whatever the act is or the issue to the individual, which is where we want the focus to be anyway.
Right. And I think, too, one of the things that's so helpful for me when I'm either seeking support or trying to offer support is a great follow-up question is, what does support look like? And especially when it comes to mental health, the way one person receives support is different than another. You know, on my drive into the studio, my husband called and said, "Good luck today. I know we've been running crazy this week." He knows that is kind of my love language, and that verbal interaction for just a minute is how support is helpful. But if someone that you love is really struggling with, especially chronic depression, sometimes there's not words for it anymore. And the dynamics in a family start to have a change or a shift just because there's this chronic whatever, fill in the gap, chronic illness, mental health issue that does change kind of the way we interact. We do stop asking questions. We've asked all the questions. It's the elephant in the room.
Right.
And so that's oftentimes when I pray that others that are in the people I love's lives will show up that day. Because sometimes, I have a daughter serving a full-time mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and she just had her weekly phone call and shared that one of the senior couples that she's serving with had a conversation with her that I know we've had, others have had with her, but the way this person said the exact same thing, all of a sudden the light bulbs clicked on, and it was about the intrusive thoughts that sometimes come and that high vulnerability that sometimes shows up and that she faced her first year of college. And I was just so grateful. I messaged this sister and I just said, thank you for whatever way you said it in a way that clicked for her. And so don't always feel like you have to be the support or the problem solver. Have the conversations in a way knowing that there is a network out there.
Yeah, so important. And that's an important message for all of us, that we can be that person. We may think, oh, they've got a supportive spouse, or they've got this or that in their life. Don't ever underestimate your ability to make a difference in someone's life by reaching out, by asking the question, even if it's a simple, how are you really doing today? I think those are important parts. I want to talk for a minute about therapy.
Okay, let's do it. It's fun.
And how we change the dynamic and kind of the stigma around therapy. You always say, this is not about therapy. This is about education.
Yeah, I think therapy for me is a broad term first and foremost. There's a lot more resources under that umbrella of therapy than there were even 5 years ago. When you say therapy, it's not always just the traditional talk therapy. And when we reframe it in a way that I love that I like to reframe things that feel like maybe they're clunky or they're triggering or they're heavy. Is there a way to reframe it so that it feels more attainable or accessible? And for me, education is that. I'm a teacher by trade, and so for me, education is a positive term. And so when we talk about therapy, can we talk about it in a way that education is therapy that therapy is the education for our relationships, our brains, and our hearts? And when we talk about that in that way, then can't we brag about it a little? Like, why aren't we posting? I went to therapy today and it was amazing. See what happens when you kind of break through at the conversation around the lunch table at work, where you admit that now with telemed, you're doing therapy maybe in your car on a break and you don't have to go get a babysitter. And that is one of the good things of COVID. I think we have a telemed network now that has expanded. But when we post about it, talk about it in really these natural, normal ways and reframe it as education instead of like, well, why are you in therapy?
What's wrong with you?
Well, why isn't everyone in therapy? We all should be, because we all can use a little more education.
Love it. Final thought, really the message to those who might be in a dark space today, who might be thinking of an exit strategy, or that it's not worth it to keep fighting and going, or considering suicide or self-harm in any way. What's the message for them today?
So that's why I do these interviews, and if one person hears it and then remembers it, it's worth it for me. And that is that we'll never be better without you. There's not a person on the planet that is the extra kid. that is the appendix of the human family that we could do without. And so, especially for those that may be dealing with chronic addiction issues or mental health issues that have really changed those dynamics in home or workplaces, and they don't feel like they're actually benefiting the world anymore, that's the lie. That's the great lie.
Yeah.
My sister died 9 years ago by suicide, and my life isn't better without her. Yes, I've taken her death and her situation and created a stewardship in my own life by having these conversations, writing books and speaking about it, but we'll never be better without you. And the reality is that phrase has stuck in people's minds, long after they've heard me say it. And for that, I'm so grateful. Yeah. And it's usually, I've heard from people that are actually driving home, they catch a conversation like this and they've had the plan already laid out. And so that's in their mind the last day they went to work. And so if you're driving and hearing Boyd and I talking right now, please know to stay in your body, that imperfect body that is filled with arthritis, acne, and anxiety. You are still a gift to the world, and we need you.
Oh, fantastic. Gaynell and Condi, always appreciate our conversations.
Thanks for having me.
If you are listening today and if you are in a dark spot, reach out. That's the first thing. Just reach out, whether you use the 988 number 24/7, you can access that. The Safe UT app, everybody should have that. There's a host of other resources, but wherever you are, reaching out is the first step. And for all of us, reaching out is the first step. If you know someone, if you suspect somebody in your life that is in a bad place, reach out. It's about linking arms, locking arms, and stepping out of the darkness into the light together. And again, Gaynell and Condi, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
We'll stay with that conversation throughout the month of September as well. We'll step aside for some quick news. More Inside Sources coming up next on KSL News Radio.
This Tuesday,
You can postmark your ballot on Election Day this year.
Republicans make their choice.
It's hard to compare this election to ones of the past.
Reporter Lindsay Aerts will cover every twist and turn in our countdown to the 2nd District primary. It's the race to replace Congressman Chris Stewart. All this week on KSL News Radio.
You know, Deb, I'm a huge DIY guy, but one thing I'm not going to touch is electrical.
I've got the answer for you. You have to call Master Electrical. They have what's called upfront pricing. You know how bids can be a guessing game, and the longer an expert's in your home, the bigger the bill is? Not with Master Electrical. This upfront pricing is amazing.
Yeah, their pricing system won't even allow them to go higher.
They do everything that has to do with electrical. You need lights? Call Master Electrical. Ceiling fans, smoke detectors, generators, batteries, even EV chargers.
And all that pricing is upfront, and it's a guarantee.
Master Electrical proudly serves from Logan to Santaquin.
And they're always open, so if you have some emergency, they're there. Make sure you give them a call today at 866-569-0860, 866-569-0860.
Or you can check them out online at masterelectrical.com.
Do it today.
They say good things come to those who wait, but we both know the truth. If you want the good things in life, you've got to go out and get them. So if you've been dreaming of a Cadillac, don't wait. Head to Jerry Seiner Cadillac and get one for yourself. With their award-winning XT4, 5, and 6 models available on-site and the area's top selection of certified pre-owned Cadillacs, there's no need to wait to drive in luxury. Stop dreaming, start driving. Visit Jerry Seiner and experience the Seiner difference.
If this were a Reese's TV ad, you'd be staring at a Reese's peanut butter cup. And sure, my voice is peanut buttery smooth, but still, you need to see the peanut butter cups, right? No? I can really just say Reese's and you'll go get some? Okay. Reese's. 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 Really working, actually. Reese's. Reese's. I'm on to something. Reese's. Reese's. Reese's.
I'm Dr. Stork. Eggs are a staple in our diets, and there's only one egg with more delicious farm fresh taste plus superior nutrition. Eggland's Best. With more vitamins, including 6 times more vitamin D and 10 times more vitamin E, plus 25% less saturated fat than ordinary eggs. Available in so many delicious varieties. Classic, cage-free, and organic. Eggland's Best. Better taste, better nutrition, better eggs.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
At age 30, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, you can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Even before the pandemic, 1 in 5 American adults experience some form of mental illness, depression, suicide, prescription opioid misuse. Utah isn't immune to our share of challenges, but there is hope. We need to take action to keep our loved ones safe. That's why KSL has teamed with the University of Utah Huntsman Mental Health Institute to bring you hope and help you thrive. It's Healthy Mind Matters. Find out more at healthymindmatters.com.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, winds up to 55 miles an hour have resulted in restrictions on Interstate 80 to travel by high-profile vehicles. The restrictions extend from Lake Point to Wendover at the Nevada state line. Second, Utah saw fewer bad air quality days through the winter and spring this year. And third, utility crews in Florida making progress restoring power to more than 500,000 customers who lost service during Hurricane Idalia. Right now, 73 degrees, mostly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Inside Sources, an inside look at 2024 presidential politics.
Every week on Friday at 1:50, we take an inside look, inside sources when it comes to presidential politics. Now, we often tee this up by saying trying to understand the behavior of someone running for president is like trying to smell the color 7. And often that is the challenge. As you watch what some of these candidates do, what some of their campaigns flail about to trying to accomplish, or as they try to get positioning or a little bump in the polls or raise some money to keep their campaigns afloat. We want to get into some of the interesting comments made during the week and what they actually mean and why they are relevant in terms of where we are in this. This is, of course, rolling into Labor Day weekend, and things will really heat up once we get to Tuesday next week. Of course, we have the local election here Tuesday. Don't forget about that. Get your ballots in. And then we'll be marching towards the next GOP Republican primary debate, which will be a little later on in the month of September. But we're going to start actually in the White House with the current occupant of the White House, who also happens to be running for re-election. President Biden gave remarks earlier today on economics. This has been a theme, and it's been a messaging challenge, I think, for the White House in a number of ways. They went with Bidenomics and found that was a struggle. They found even many of their own party were using other terms other than Bidenomics for fear there might be some backlash or a little bit of a dead weight category. And so this was very interesting. When the president spoke today, instead of focusing on the August job numbers, which had a mix, they had some good news in there, some bad news in there on the unemployment, as unemployment rose unexpectedly. But it appears that some of the inflation is cooling just a bit. But here's the interesting thing. The president spent most of his time focused not on where we were, but just on how far we've come.
We faced some pretty tough times in recent years. A pandemic that took more than 1 million of our friends and neighbors. The worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. But the American people didn't give up. And today we have the strongest economy in the world. The lowest inflation rate among the major economies. 13.5 million new jobs. While I'm proud of the historic legislation my administration has passed, the real heroes in this story are the American people, average Americans. Thanks to them, we're going to continue to grow our economy from the middle out, the bottom up, with good paying jobs.
So very interesting. And I think what this is telling us, again, as we look inside the campaigns, is that the president is continuing to struggle to connect what's happening and the experience that the American people are living. So today, in a bit of a pivot, rather than focus on the numbers of jobs reports and economy and inflation numbers and all of that, the president instead went back to things that the American people can relate to. He went back to the tough times we've had, pandemic, economic crisis, all of those kinds of things, and then moving it forward. And so that's going to continue to be the challenge for the president, is taking whatever good news comes in terms of the economy and making sure it's congruent in his messaging with what the American people are actually living and experiencing. It's a tricky thing for the White House, and I don't think they've quite figured it out yet. But today was clearly a pivot away from just saying the good news of the numbers and just saying this is where we've been, this is what we've done together, this is why we have to continue on the path. I think it's an interesting strategy. Now, Senator Tim Scott was campaigning this week in South Carolina, big barbecue week in South Carolina. He was speaking at the Faith and Freedom Barbecue. That's an annual fundraising event there in the state. During his speech, he described our country not as a nation in decline, but as a nation in retreat. Interesting perspective. Take a listen.
But in America, we are not a nation in decline. Under President Biden, we are a nation in retreat. A nation in retreat just needs new leadership. You see, the people are strong. The American people have steel in their spine. We are the most powerful force for good on God's green earth. What we need is a government that gets out of the way and unleashes the greatest miracle. It's the notion of American exceptionalism.
So again, very positive message from Senator Scott. Now, he's entering an interesting phase of his campaign. He is fun to listen to. He can rock a crowd like very few people on either side of the political aisle. But there is a challenge within a presidential campaign that it can get a little tired over time. We actually saw that with Marco Rubio back in 2016. A lot of positive messages, but he didn't translate those into something new, so it felt fresh, it felt new, it felt forward-moving. And I think that's going to be the test for the Tim Scott campaign. Can they take this positive message, this positive view, his own positive story, and can he start to bolt in the kinds of policy discussions and the kind of forward movement that voters actually want so they feel like they're going somewhere rather than just kind of going back to the same old lines and the same old stump speech. Now, also interesting, earlier this week, Republican candidate, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, made an appearance as he was making the rounds, and he was not talking about the former president. A pivot for Chris Christie. I think he found on the debate stage in Milwaukee that when he talks about things other than the former president, he actually does really well. So he focused heavily on China and why defending Taiwan is so important to America.
When it comes to Taiwan, the foreign policy starts in Ukraine, where we send a very clear message through our unlimited support of the Ukrainian effort to defeat the Russians, and send a clear message to China that we are not going to cut and run. We're not going to do what Joe Biden did in Afghanistan. We're not going to abandon our friends and leave them on the battlefield. That's going to send a very clear message to China that if they try to make any aggressive moves towards Taiwan, the juice will not be worth the squeeze for them in a Christie administration.
I don't know if we've ever heard that term used in the context of China and Taiwan, that the juice will not be worth the squeeze over Taiwan for China. But the important message, I think, from Governor Christie is sending the message to China that we're serious about this, that we're not going to abandon our friends and allies, that America will keep its promises and will stand with those that are standing for freedom. Really important conversation there. I think it's Governor Christie at his best. Now, North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum has not gotten a lot of attention, but he was in New Hampshire this week, and his message was about something we care about on this show, federalism. This idea that the powers delegated to the state, these laboratories of democracy, are really where things can get done. And as the governor of a state, North Dakota, Doug Burgum had a really strong message.
The federal government can't make laws just through administrative rules. They can't tell states what to do. And you know why? Because of the 10th Amendment. In the 10th Amendment, it's 28 words, it's one sentence, and in there's an important word in the Constitution. It says delegated. The powers delegated to the federal government. Delegated by who? Delegated by the states. States like New Hampshire that created the federal government. And it says if it's not specifically delegated to the federal government, it's reserved exclusively for the states and, importantly, comma, to the people.
An important conversation, especially as we head into this month where we focus on the Constitution, an important federalism discussion coming from Governor Doug Burgum. He also went on to describe the problems that arise from a government that is too top-heavy. Take a listen.
We got into North Dakota, and here you get into a state like North Dakota or the federal government, and guess what? Because there's not competition for the monopolistic things that government is doing, they never get better. There's no pressure. There's no pressure to say, we've got to improve our services, we've got to lower our prices, we've got to do it more efficiently. There's 2 million federal jobs. I have people that are saying they're going to cut the Department of Education. Department of Education is 4,000 of the 2 million jobs. We can get rid of not 4,000 jobs, I can get rid of 400,000. Get rid of 400,000 and still be doing the job better than we are today.
Very specific from Doug Burgum. It's not just about getting rid of a few thousand jobs. There's a lot in the government, a big number that can be gotten rid of. Interesting conversations on the campaign trail. We do that every Friday at 1:50. Inside Sources, inside look at presidential politics. That wraps up hour number 1 of Inside Sources today. We'll step aside for top of the hour news, but don't go anywhere. We're going to talk about revolutionary movement in higher education. You don't want to miss this. Coming up next on Inside Sources.
KSL FM Midvale, KSL Salt Lake City. Listen on the KSL News Radio app and in your car at 102.7 FM. KSL News Radio, your all-day companion for news.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour. Hikers found a body near Battle Creek Falls, east of Pleasant Grove this morning. Sergeant Spencer Cannon with the Utah County Sheriff's Office says they got a call around 10 a.m.
They found a body that was in the river in Battle Creek as it comes down about 50 yards or so from Battle Creek Falls itself.
And Cannon says they believe they know who the person was, but they want to confirm that with family and the medical examiner before they release the name. The National Weather Service says the rain we're supposed to get today and tomorrow may saturate soils enough that flash flooding becomes a risk in northern Utah. KSL News Radio's Lindsay Aerts reports there are some spots where the risk is higher.
Of course, areas most likely to see flash flooding, slot canyons, normally dry washes, areas near burn scars, and areas with poor drainage. The National Weather Service also spreading the message, turn around, don't drown. Hikers and those with outdoor plans might want to think twice.
Southern Utah has already seen soaking rains overnight. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. The whole state of Hawaii taking today as a day of prayer and ceremony in honor of the at least 115 people who died in last month's wildfire on Maui. ABC's Alex Stone reports.
Across the Hawaiian Islands, now with the search for human remains on Maui over, it is a day of prayer and vigils. From sunrise to sunset, ceremonies honoring the history and culture of Hawaii and the victims who were lost in Lahaina.
Called on our ancestors to come and be with us to help those Kanaka who are still wandering, that need help going to the land of the ancestors.
The many ceremonies broadcast across the islands via radio meant as a day of spiritual and emotional healing. Alex Stone, ABC News.
Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up 116 points right now. The NASDAQ just barely down about 3 points on the day. And our KSL weather looks like we are going to see some storms this afternoon. That's next. KSL News Time 2:02.
Start your days with knowledgeable, friendly voices telling you about the latest news and weather out there.
Hi, this is Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
In the business of waking you up each morning from 5 to 9.
On KSL News Radio.
Every business deserves a great deal. That's why, for a limited time, we're launching the Mobile Made Free event. With Comcast Business Internet, new and existing customers can get 1 year of unlimited mobile for free. Yep, you heard that right. An entire year, free. It's our best internet, powered by the next generation 10G network and with 99.9% reliability, plus 1 line of free mobile for a year. The Mobile Made Free event is happening now.
Get started with internet and advanced security for $49.99 a month for 12 months with a 2-year agreement. Plus, for a limited time only, ask how new and existing customers can get a free line of unlimited mobile during the Mobile Made Free event. Call or go online today to learn more. Ends 9/21/2023. EcoBill and autopay required. New 50 megabits per second internet and Security Edge customers only. Equipment, taxes, and fees extra. Mobile offer requires 100 megabits per second internet package and new unlimited intro mobile service. Other restrictions apply.
Turn your home into restricted airspace. Tell incoming flights you want them diverted. The new Raid Essentials Light Trap plugs into the wall and uses light to attract, then trap flying insects like fruit flies and mosquitoes. Its 24/7 continuous attraction provides insecticide-free protection that's people and pet friendly. Consider air service interrupted. New Raid Essentials Light Trap, insecticide-free protection.
2 years ago, Americans watched in horror as a crisis unfolded at the Kabul airport.
There's desperation and anguish.
More than 80,000 Afghans have since arrived in America, but this story is still unfolding. I'm Andrea Smartin. In my new podcast, Stranger Becomes Neighbor, we'll find out what happens to these new arrivals in our communities. Who would help our newest neighbors? Follow us at kslpodcast.com, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else you listen.
Big O Tires end of summer sales event. Come in now and get up to $200 off select sets of tires. Now through September 2nd. Big O Tires, the team you trust.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Granite Credit Union's new Dividend Plus checking account. Here's Ricky Meese.
Delays southbound I-15 from just about 5300 south, really all the way to Bluffdale. And then in Utah County, southbound slowdowns where we had rain earlier going from Payson into Spring Lake. Also be advised we have a high-profile restriction in place due to the weather for all high-profile vehicles, both directions of I-80 between Lake Point and the Nevada state line. The Utah RV Super Show at Mountain America Expo Center in Sandy, September 14th through the 17th. Get information and discount passes at UtahRVSupershow.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, windy today with a chance of thunderstorms this afternoon. Heavy rainfall could happen in some spots. There's a significant risk of flash flooding in southern Utah as well. Today's high 85 with a high of 75 expected by the time we get to Labor Day. 71 degrees and cloudy right now at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM at KSLNewsRadio.com. Your all-day companion for news.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Often when it comes to higher education, whether it's here in the United States of America or in many places around the world, it's just out of reach. Well, there's one program based here in the state of Utah that is trying to change that and revolutionize access to higher education. Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
We often talk about on this program how education is such a crucial part of upward mobility and really strengthening neighborhoods, community, and society as a whole. Brian K. Ashton is the president of BYU Pathway Worldwide. He took over that post formally in 2021. This has been an exciting time for BYU Pathway and looking at the global perspective in terms of having an impact. And we're just really thrilled to have President Ashton on the line with us today. President, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Boyd. I'm excited to be here.
Well, let's dive into this conversation. And for some of our listeners who have probably heard of BYU Pathway Worldwide but may not be familiar with the ins and outs of it, give us kind of a high-level view of what's the purpose, what's the vision and mission of this institution.
Well, as you know, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has what they call the church education system, and it consists of 5 institutions of higher learning, and then it also has seminaries and institutes. And we want to work as a system together. BYU Pathway's role in that system is to be the access provider. So we make the education that's offered by CES available to the entire world. We're in over 180 countries. We have almost 70,000 students. And we're growing very, very rapidly. But we offer these degrees because we do it online. We can do it at a very, very low cost.
Yeah, and that access is been such a barrier to so many all around the world in terms of being able to improve, develop different skills, increase employment opportunities, and so on. One area that has really been a focus of late has been the success of the program down in Africa. Give us a little sketch of that.
Africa has been a huge miracle. We started there in Ghana in 2010, and when we go into an area, oftentimes you get a surge in enrollment, and then it kind of levels off. We have not seen that in Africa at all. It continues to grow. This year we will finish with 20,000 students in Africa, and by 2028, so within 5 years, we expect to have 72,000 students in Africa alone. That's bigger than BYU. That's twice the size of BYU.
Wow. That is
just in Africa.
That is stunning. And the impact of that, the way that is reshaping so many things. I mean, it'll reshape what higher ed looks like in Africa. So give us some perspective on that, and then what it's actually doing in these individual lives as they go through the program, develop these skills, get these certificates.
So in Africa, there are only seats in universities for 8 to 9% of the university-age youth. And so, you get weeded out of a university track very early in your schooling, and very few people get to go. There are also no low-cost universities there, other than a few public universities that are just nearly impossible to get into. And so we offer this low-cost education, primarily for members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. 30% of our students can be non-members. But we're looking for people who want both, high-quality education, but who also want to come closer to Jesus Christ. And of our return missionaries in Africa who come from Africa, over 50% enroll in BYU pathways. So it's changing the face of what the Church of Jesus Christ looks like there compared to the rest of the continent. But at the same time, we're educating a lot of people who are not members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and giving them an opportunity to come closer to their Savior, as well as move up in the socioeconomic status.
Yeah, it's such an amazing transformation, and the impact, again, on neighborhood, community, society, and countries is, I don't even know if we can estimate that at this point in the program, but the reach is so extensive, and again, the accessibility, both in terms of the system, in terms of these stackable certificates that give people a real way to move through. I know that you also deal with scholarships for those, especially in Africa, who may not be able to afford it on their own. Kind of give us a sense of how that plays out and what that looks like.
Well, the main reason people in Africa, and quite honestly throughout the world, but especially in Africa, the main reason people drop out is because they can't afford it, even though we're very, very low cost. We have the lowest cost bachelor's degree in the United States. In Africa, we're looking at, before scholarships, an average cost for the entire degree of around $600. But 90% of our students who drop out have a passing grade. 69% of our students in Africa get one meal a day. And so it just makes a huge difference for them to have scholarships. I don't know if your listeners are interested in helping, but even a $5, $10, $20 donation towards our scholarships makes a huge difference in the lives of these people.
And we talk about that every day on this program, that it's the last thing we say is to go out and do something that makes a difference. And this is one of those where even just a very small, simple donation can literally transform a life in terms of education, upward mobility, and then that ripple effect through a community is just so powerful. I know there's some other things that you've announced just within the last 24, 48 hours in terms of your system and process and just the accessibility and the opportunity it creates for people everywhere. Give us some sense of that.
Yeah, we're very excited to announce that our degrees, which are offered through BYU Idaho and Ensign College, were just approved to be 90 credits. What that means is the traditional bachelor's degree is 120 credits, or roughly 40 classes. This now means that students can get the same bachelor's degree with the same outcomes for just 30 classes, or roughly 30 classes. That means we've cut the cost of a bachelor's degree by 25%. We've cut the number of classes you have to take by 25%, and the time it takes to complete by 25%. This is a huge deal for adult learners especially, because the way our degrees are structured, you're getting certificates along the way that are getting you better jobs. And what we found was they would get the 3 certificates that they needed for their major and for their bachelor's degree. They take their general education, and then under 120 credits, we said, look, you still got to take another 30 credits. And it didn't make a difference in them getting into graduate school or getting a job. And they were like, why do we have to do this? And so they were trying to find just the easiest courses that they could take. So we went to the accreditors and said, this doesn't make any sense. Let's do what's right for the students. And we ended up with this 90-credit degree. So we're the first institution in the United States to have this. And it's truly revolutionary in higher education.
Yeah, and this is, we talk about a lot of times we nibble at the margins and we settle for incremental change. This is quantum change. If you're changing that dynamic by about 25%, that is such a game changer. And if again the outcomes, opportunities for graduate school and all of that is the same under 90 credits, to me that is such an extraordinary game changer, especially as you said for those adult learners.
Well, I've had a lot of adult learners call me or text me this morning saying, thank you. This is such a big change. And one of them even said, I just lost my husband. I wasn't sure I could continue. But the fact that I have a year less gives me the hope that I can continue.
Yeah, fabulous. Before I let you go, President, what else should we be thinking about, or should people be thinking differently about as it relates to higher education and BYU pathway?
Yeah, so 2 things. One, let me just put in a plug that if you want to enroll, next Friday is the deadline, the 8th, and so we'd love to have you enroll if you're interested. But I think the other thing, because we're sponsored by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we realize that all truth is taught by the Holy Ghost. Our curriculum is designed to help you learn how to use the Holy Ghost in your learning. So what I've found is anyone can do well in school if they're willing to, just do the things that will bring the Holy Ghost in their life. They can learn, they can succeed, and they can have all the blessings of education and draw closer to their Savior at the same time.
Love that. Such an important part of that full educational experience. Brian Ashton is the president of BYU Pathway Worldwide, and it is worldwide. The impact from Africa right here to Utah and everywhere in between is just absolutely extraordinary, really revolutionizing the way education can be delivered, and the impact, the outcomes that it can have are just unbelievable. President Ashton, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Boyd. It was a pleasure.
So many great conversations within that conversation. You want to check out the podcast there as we look at a different way to help people get the education they need so they can have upward mobility, and the ripple impact on neighborhoods, on families, on community will spread throughout the world. It is a powerful process. It is a principle whose time has come.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. Just one more day until BYU's Big 12 debut.
He's going to go 20, 15, 10, 5, touchdown!
Saturday night, the Cougars sink their claws into the Sam Houston Bearcats. KSL pregame starts Saturday at 6. And then Sunday morning, get a total Big 12 roundup. The all-new First and 12. First and 12. Sunday 10 to noon on Utah's legacy home of the Cougars. KSL News Radio.
Held over due to popular demand. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to save 40 to 80% on a hot tub and swim spa. 4 days only, today through Monday. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Be advised, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to save 40 to 80% on a hot tub and swim spa. 4 days only, today through Monday. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. 18-month interest-free financing. Our factories have demanded we sell 1,000 hot tubs and swim spas this weekend. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Huge factory incentives, factory rebates, this weekend only. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. We can remove your old hot tub. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Hot tub starting at $2,999. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Just relax and enjoy. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Today, new day. Saturday 10 to 8. Sunday 10 to 6. Monday 10 to 6. Free admission, free parking, free delivery. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Call 833-SPA-SALE or visit hottubandSwimSpaSale.com.
It's me again, and of course, I'm at the annual Fall Extravaganza at J&J Garden Center in Layton. And what a great time to buy. Right now, all containerized trees, all shrubs, and all perennials are 20% off. You heard me right. J&J's entire inventory of containerized trees, shrubs, and perennials are 20% off their regular price. J&J Garden Center definitely has the best products at the best price, and most definitely the best service, too. But don't take my word for it. Come experience J&J Garden Center for yourself. Take advantage of their incredible fall tree, shrub, and perennial extravaganza. Take the Layton Parkway exit, Main Street to Gentile, then west 2 miles. You've got to see it to believe it. You really do.
Country grown to your home, J&J Garden Center.
You know, there are whodunits, and then there's Catch Me If You Can that is showing right now at Hale Center Theater. The other night, Dee and I had the chance to be there, and it is a remarkable production. You are left wondering what in the world is going on, who indeed did do it. Don't miss Catch Me If You Can. It's showing right now at Hale Center Theater. And don't forget, in a couple of weeks, mid-September, it'll be Around the World in 80 Days. It's time to get your tickets for that production. And then also Elf is coming up in November. And believe it or not, it's not too early to get your tickets for A Christmas Carol at Hale Center Theater. Every year I get a call from the theater and they say, yeah, I know it's September, I know it's October, but we're getting sold out. Don't miss the opportunity to see this amazing production that you're going to love at Hale Center Theater. Get your tickets for everything right now at hct.org.
Getting help with electrical repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, the risk of flash flooding isn't limited to southern Utah. Storms expected this afternoon for the Wasatch Front as well. Second, hikers found a body near Battle Creek Falls in Pleasant Grove this morning. They haven't released the person's name. And third, it's a day of spiritual healing across all the islands of Hawaii today as people remember those lost in the wildfires on Maui. Right now, 71 degrees and cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
As we continue to watch closely what is happening and what is not happening with Ukraine's counteroffensive, the chatter has been increasingly loud in terms of the weakness of the effort or the lack of progress. And that's not always the right thing to look at. That's the top line headline stuff. But there's a lot underneath that we should think again, rethink, reevaluate, or look just a little closer at. And so that's what we want to do as we talk about Ukraine and their effort to drive Russia out of their sovereign territory as a free nation, and how important that is, and what it actually takes to have that kind of progress. Defense is one thing. Offense is another. Counter offense is tricky stuff. It's really hard. Within the last week, retired General David Petraeus spoke with CNN about what's going on in Ukraine. And it's important. The reason I'm leaning into the conversation with David Petraeus is he understands something about counteroffensive or when you have to change dynamic. Petraeus, of course, retired U.S. Army general. He was the commander of the troop surge in Iraq. He was U.S. Central Command and NATO U.S. forces in Afghanistan. So he understands how this works in terms of offensive, counteroffensive, retrenchment, all of those things. And so perspective is what we have to keep in mind as we look at this. I know we'd all love for it to be over really quickly. It's not going to happen, but we have to look at the reality of the dynamics on the ground, what has been done, what Russia can do defensively. Offensively, they haven't been all that great. Defensively is a little easier. So General Petraeus started by saying, look, we've got to have some perspective. The Ukrainians are up against a host of real significant challenges, and even the U.S. Would have struggled to do the counteroffensive with what Russia had laid down.
The truth is we could not have done this. In fact, the only 2 times where we've done anything remotely like this, and we didn't face anywhere near the kind of defenses that the Russians have established, was in the Gulf War, where we pounded the Iraqis for 39 days from the sky without any opposition and then rolled over them in 100 hours. Some tough fighting, to be sure, but not what we're seeing, not these miles deep minefields, again, covered by observation and fire.
So that's a really important component to this, that Russia has trenches, concrete, and mines, landmines planted all over the place. So even making very small gains, not to mention you have to do that while the Russians are still firing at you. So this is hard work and heavy lifting. This is a slow grind. You have to clear the space. You have to make sure all the mines have been cleared out, and then you make a very small advance if you're also not having to retreat because of what Russia is doing, because they're sitting there watching you try to take some advance and make some progress. General Petraeus went on to explain that Ukraine has none of the advantages that the U.S. had in the Gulf War, which is, again, a really interesting comparison.
We had, again, air supremacy. We didn't have the long preparation that we had prior to the Gulf War, but we also had huge numbers of armored breaching devices, if you will. So there's essentially, think of armored bulldozers that are completely with ballistic glass and everything else, and you just roll these forward. Well, the Ukrainians don't have the numbers of those that they would need, and they don't have air cover at all, much less air superiority or air supremacy as we had.
General Petraeus is really saying, look, the degree of difficulty factor for Ukraine is really high. They don't have all the armored vehicles that the U.S. has. They don't have any of the air cover, air power supremacy that the U.S. would have. He also commented on the fact that many American officials have been criticizing Ukraine's counteroffensive. I love his response to that.
I might suggest to those who are doing that, if you will, that perhaps we should be focusing on providing additional assistance to ensure that they're going to be able to carry out this offensive for another 4 months or so. Keep in mind, we're just at the 10-week mark. This is like a third of the way through the surge in Iraq, when I was also getting lots of questions and comments, and people were wondering whether the surge had failed and so forth. First of all, no plan survives contact with the enemy. They have adapted, I think, very impressively.
So some important messaging in there, I think, from General Petraeus, even talking about his period there, the surge in Iraq, where he said, look, there's a lot of armchair generals out there who want to tell you that you're failing, that you're not doing it right, that you should have done it differently. He also commented on the fact that the Ukrainians are adapting because no plan survives the moment that you actually make contact with the enemy. Everything changes. And so being able to adapt and adjust, and he actually applauded the Ukrainians for how they have adapted in a pretty impressive way. He went on to say that we need to keep in mind the bigger picture, that Ukraine does understand what's going on the ground. They do know the capacity of their soldiers. They know the landscape. They know all of those things.
They know their forces far better than we do, and their capabilities and their lack of capabilities. They know the terrain far better than we do. They're fighting their war of independence. We shouldn't forget that. This is total mobilization in Ukraine, and they are keenly aware of the need to achieve results during this particular offensive.
So it is a real crucial time for Ukraine. Again, counteroffensives are really hard. Now, it's part of the question. You have to start saying, do they have the right assets and right resources? Additional funding has been provided. Additional weapons have been provided. We know training of F-16 pilots is underway. But remember, it's not just you got to train the pilot. You got to train the crew. You got to have the assets on the battlefield. You have to be able to protect it. You have to have runways that are long enough. There are so many things. It's going to be months for that to really have a huge impact. So you do have to have some perspective in terms of timing, and the fact that General Petraeus said, look, we're only a little ways into this thing in terms of a counteroffensive. And most of what is being done is on that real front, close contact kind of space. They need to be able to do some of that deep stuff in order to really start moving Russia back or change that dynamic. I want to go to one last comment from General Petraeus. And again, I think his perspective on this is really important because it gets us past the headlines of how much we're spending or, who's doing what and when and why and all of those kinds of things. It gets us to a little better part of the question. And so the final thing that General Petraeus shared was the question of where we go from here, who that depends on, and what the Ukrainians understand that perhaps the Russians maybe don't.
I'm sure you saw the liberation of this town in Zaporizhia, where the Ukrainians are coming up with tears in their eyes, hugging their soldiers. The Ukrainians know what they're fighting for. I'm not so sure that all these conscripts do know what they're fighting for, or, quote, volunteers lured by large salaries from remote villages in the Russian Federation. So the question really, I think, most of all, is about how the Russians do when they're really put under pressure once the Ukrainians can start to crack the front lines of these defenses.
So we're going to continue to monitor and watch all of this. And again, everyone that I'm hearing from, everything I'm seeing today is an acknowledgement that, yes, Ukraine is making progress with this counteroffensive. There does appear to be some cracks in the lines with the Russian forces. And as I said before, the Ukrainians are having to clear away mines and cement bunkers and trenches. And so this is a tough one. This is a tough slog. But I think there are some cracks that are starting to appear, and it takes patience to see the whole battlefield. And remember that it's not what we're trying to get done today. It's what we're ultimately trying to achieve, which is for Russia to leave Ukraine, for Ukraine to be a free and sovereign country that can be independent and chart their own future. All right, we'll step aside for some bottom of the hour news. You don't want to go anywhere. We're going to talk about some religious liberty components, some things happening around the world. President of the General Relief Society of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Camille N. Johnson, joins us for a conversation coming up next.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top local story this hour. We have some breaking news. The Salt Lake County Health Department says a bat has tested positive for rabies at the Draper City Skate Park. They're asking anybody who's been touched or by or touched a bat at the park at 13390 South and 300 East. Call the health department. Signs have been posted at the park, and it is still open. If you're catching a flight this weekend, you won't be lonely. Labor Day weekend is one of the busiest of the year at Salt Lake City International, with traveler counts at near record levels.
Today, Friday, is one of the busier days leading into the weekend. We are looking at more than 30,000 passengers come through the front door. We think that most people are taking off today, and then they'll start coming back on Monday, so we'll probably see the pickup in numbers again on Monday and again on Tuesday.
That's Nancy Vollmer, airport spokesperson. She says to give yourself some extra time and to be patient. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. Most of the businesses in the area of Florida hit by Hurricane Idalia are back operating once again. And this Friday from Governor Ron DeSantis, who said business owners worked hard to get their shops back up and running.
I visited the Waffle House in Madison. It opened like 4 or 5 hours after the storm went through. They were back open.
One area where businesses are not reopening is in Cedar Key, where the storm surge covered the downtown area with 9 feet of water. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average, closing trading today 115 points up. The NASDAQ down just barely, 3 points down. The S&P 500 was up about 8 points today. And our KSL weather. We've got the rain. Here it is. That's next. KSL News Time, 2:32.
This summer, the political season heats up.
By August, it'll be time for debates. Can you believe it?
We're planning coverage of the real issues, the important stories that impact how we live.
Listen each morning from 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
In this market, you'll find Fisher Investments is different than other money managers.
Different how? Aren't we all just looking for the hottest stocks?
Nope. We use diversified strategies to position our clients' portfolios for their long-term goals.
You don't just provide cookie-cutter portfolios?
No, we tailor our clients' portfolios to their goals and needs.
But you still sell investments that generate high commissions for you, right?
No, we don't sell commission-based products. We're a fiduciary, the highest standard of care for a financial advisor. It means we're obligated to act in our clients' best interest.
So when do you make more money? Only when your clients make more money?
Yep, we have one transparent management fee structured, so we do better when our clients do better.
Sounds like you really look out for your clients.
We do, because our priority is helping them achieve a comfortable retirement. That might be why most of our clients come from other money managers. Visit FisherInvestments.com to find out why investors like you switch to us. Fisher Investments. Clearly, different money management.
Investments in securities involve the risk of loss.
I'm Shanola Hampton. Every day, millions of people face hunger. Today, I will share with you some of their experiences. I'm stuck between paying for medications or paying for food. John from Maine. After paying my bills, I can buy groceries. It's sad to say, food comes last. Alice from Oregon. I thought pantries were for less fortunate people, but anybody could be less fortunate in a day or even a second. Claire from Virginia. The Feeding America network of food banks helps provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. No one should have to worry where their next meal will come from. Together, we can end hunger. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
Utah's best entertainment for 34 years running happens next week at Thanksgiving Point. Join story lovers from across the globe at Timpanogos Storytelling Festival. Visit timpfest.org.
Emergency traffic now brought to you by Granite Credit Union's new Dividend Plus checking account. Here's Ricky Meese.
We have a few different problems. One is a closure westbound Highway 6 due to a crash about a mile prior to the Highway 89 junction in Thistle. That's on the Utah County side. Then we've had an accident affecting both directions of travel on I-80. This is near the SR-36 junction, about not far from Tooele. And you will see that left lanes are blocked in both directions and delays are definitely starting to stack up there. And if your drive home this afternoon takes you westbound, just remember delays could linger into the afternoon drive. And I-80 is still where we have high-profile vehicles restricted to travel until further notice due to the weather. Sprinkler system on autopilot. It's time to dial back outdoor watering. For more ways to save water, visit Jordan Valley Water Conservancy District at jvwcd.org/conservation. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, windy, chance of thunderstorms this afternoon, and heavy rainfall could happen in some spots. There's a significant risk of flash flooding in southern Utah as well. High 85 today, a high of 75 is all we're expecting on Labor Day. Right now, 72 degrees with a rain shower at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. Your all-day companion for news.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
We're really thrilled to be joined in studio today by President Camille Ann Johnson, General Relief Society President for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. President, thanks for making time for us today.
I'm always happy to be here with you, Boyd. Thank you.
You have had an amazing sprint over the last few months, including going over to the Notre Dame Religious Liberty Summit that was convened in London. Give us some perspective of who you met with and why that was so important.
It was a sweet privilege for me to have the opportunity to address that group. It was an international group of people. Many of them are academics that have invested their professional lives into researching and protecting religious liberty. And there were also a number of religious leaders that were convened for that gathering. So I made some wonderful new friends, made some new connections, and had an opportunity to address a group with a panel that included a Catholic bishop from Nigeria and a rabbi who works as a chaplain at a university there in England. And it was really a wonderful opportunity, as I say, to make those connections. It's clear to me that as we develop those connections and work together, we can accomplish so much more as a united front in terms of protecting religious liberty.
It's so important. And we've talked about this in so many different places and spaces as we look at religious liberty really being the first of the first freedoms here in America, but around the world, it really is a precursor to human flourishing. Tell us about that part of the conversation.
A precursor to a peaceful society, to a society that has less violence, to societies that protect the rights of their children and the family. So seeing these smart and hardworking people come together in that cause, I'm optimistic that working together, we can continue to protect those vital freedoms.
Yeah, you delivered a landmark address that was so powerful, and I love that you referenced the beginning of Relief Society, one of the largest and oldest women's organizations in the world, and this wonderful phrase that I can't get out of my head, that these extraordinary opportunities and challenges and these pressing callings. Give us some sense of that.
Yeah. Emma Smith said in 1842, at the time the Relief Society was organized, that the women expected extraordinary occasions and pressing calls. So I used that phrase as a way of introducing who I was, a member of the Relief Society, but also to explain that it is an extraordinary occasion and pressing call. And if like-minded people don't come together in protection of those freedoms, they'll fail us. Yeah. It requires action for us to preserve and protect those freedoms.
Yeah. I want to get to some of those other extraordinary calls,
Yeah.
those pressing calls on extraordinary occasions. For the women of the world, part of your role as the Relief Society General President is to look at women and children all around the world in conjunction with the presiding bishopric and others. Those are really extraordinary occasions and pressing
Yes.
calls. Give us some perspective of that.
Yeah. Well, we are focused in on the needs of women and children. When I say women, it's important for us to bless the lives of expectant mothers so that they may flourish and that their children will flourish as well. As a church, we have made significant contributions to organizations that are interested in blessing the lives of women and children, particular emphasis on the nutrition of children up to age 5. I actually had an opportunity in February to visit Uganda, and I was there with officials of UNICEF because the church had made a contribution to UNICEF, part of a program called No Time to Waste. And the point is that we have to address the nutritional needs of these children early so that they can flourish as teenagers and adults. And it was just really breathtaking, heartbreaking, and heartwarming all at the same time, because we really had found the one. We'd figured out how to address the needs of these children by educating their mothers primarily, teaching them about appropriate nutrition and how they could draw upon the resources that were available to them to provide nutritious food for their children was really lovely. Then those mothers that were educated went out and educated other mothers. It was really ministering the way that that effort was accomplished. But I was privileged to be part of that effort to assess the work of UNICEF, and pleased to report that it was going well in the northeast part of Uganda.
And I love that whole model, because that's not a model just for Africa or for places that are suffering. That's a model for us right here in our own neighborhood. I love this concept that you often speak to, that we have the dollar contributions, we have the big opportunities to do big things, but it really is exactly what you just described. It's educating one mother who educates one mother who takes care of their children, and then their community, and everybody rises in the process.
Yeah. The Bishop's Storehouse is really the resources we bring to bear. And some have financial resources to contribute. Others have time and talents. But whatever it is that we have to contribute, we are part of this global cause to bless Heavenly Father's children. And what motivates us? It's love. It's love for our Heavenly Father, and it's love for our neighbor. And so we are compelled, and we want to care for those in need because they're our brothers and sisters. So without regard to location or race or political persuasion or religion, we'll do our best to care for those in need.
Oh, that's such a powerful and important message. So often we look at people who are struggling, whether it's with food insecurity or housing insecurity or addiction, and so often they get viewed as a liability to be managed rather than a human asset with divine potential. And the Relief Society all around the world is focused on that divine potential, often meeting a physical need or an emotional need so that they can rise.
Knowing who we are changes everything. When we recognize for ourselves that we're children of a loving Heavenly Father with that divine identity and divine potential, we see others in the same way. And then our responsibility, and really it's a blessing, our blessed opportunity then is to help them, to care for them the way the Savior would.
Fantastic. Before I let you go, President, I always want to know what's under the radar. What's the thing you wish we were talking about more As you look at particularly as you look at the women of the world and look at our communities, what do you wish we were having more conversations about?
I wish my sisters around the world were talking about the last words of President Nelson. Whatever he's taught last is what we ought to be focusing in on. And since his conference talk about peacemakers being needed, I hope that our efforts and energies have been focused on that. He actually communicates with us all about every 10 days using his social media account. And if you're following that, you see that he's built upon his peacemakers needed message and helped us understand better how we can stand up for what we believe, standing up for truth, but doing it in a way that creates peace rather than contention. So I hope my sisters are focused on the last words, the latest words from our president, President Nelson.
Yeah, so important. And I'm going to sneak in one last question because that was just too good of an answer not to not to play off of. And that is this whole idea of being a peacemaker. We live in a time where we talk about the polarization politically, and yet when we come together in service, everything goes away. Nobody's asking who you voted for in the last election if you're helping a neighbor clean their yard or if you're down at the soup kitchen. How can we use both President Nelson's message about being a peacemaker? How do we use that to actually bring community together and to strengthen individuals, families, and communities?
You know who's really good at that are our children and our youth. Following their example, you roll up your sleeves and you play with whoever's out on the playground, right?
Yeah.
And you figure out how to make things work. And then you all go over together and take care of the person who fell down and, and is hurt. I think maybe we can learn a lot from the way our children respond. I wish our sisters were paying attention to what President Nelson was saying.
Yeah.
And if we would listen to him and if we would follow his counsel, he knows what we need. He knows what we need in anticipation of this upcoming political season. And so he counseled with us in April to be peacemakers. And I remember when he said, if there's anything virtuous, lovely, of good report, or praiseworthy, you should say that. And if you can't think of anything to say that falls in that category, he didn't say it quite this way, but keep your mouth shut.
Yeah.
It's harder than it sounds.
Yeah.
And as we try to express our beliefs, which are important, we have an obligation to speak up and speak out. As women of the church, that's something that we've been asked to do.
Yeah.
But to do it in a way that doesn't invite contention, but must be given with our conviction, is something I'm certainly working at. It's something we can all work at. And I'm so happy to have received that prophetic direction and that prophetic invitation to do better at that.
I don't think there's a more important invitation for our time across political spectrum, across religious spectrum, all of that. There's nothing more important than peacemakers. It really is the bridge that takes us to important places. President Johnson, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
A great conversation, and I actually had the chance to sit down with President Johnson, have an extended conversation for Sunday edition on KSL TV. You can check that out on Sunday at 9 a.m., right after Meet the Press, right before Music and the Spoken Word, an extended conversation on KSL TV with President Camille Ann Johnson, Relief Society General President for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. All right, we'll step aside for one last commercial break. We're going to stay with that theme in terms of our political conversations, going into a weekend where there'll be a lot of political chatter in the midst of Labor Day activities. We'll talk about that coming up as we round out the program here on Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hey guys, are you over 30? Let's talk about testosterone and performance. Your testosterone can decline at an average of 1% to 2% a year after you turn 30. And Revive Men's Health have been experts at treating men with low testosterone and ED since 2011. We're the clinic guys come to when their current treatment isn't working. They have a complicated medical condition, or they're just not happy with their performance. We love what we do and the patients we care for. You can ask our patients. We did, and we have a 99% patient satisfaction rate this year. Our patients even tell us we're more affordable than their insurance deductibles and copays. Let's get to the bottom of your issues and fix them. That's what we do, and we do it really well. Book your T-check and exam today. Call 801-263-7777. That's 801-263-7777. Or send us a private message at revivemenshealth.com.
Home is your sanctuary, or is it? If you're tired of yard work, too much space to clean over multiple levels, listen up. Start enjoying home a little more with Nielsen Homes' newest single-level townhomes. Move-in ready without the thought of tedious yard work and close to all the things you love and enjoy. Nielsen Homes offers spacious, single-level, open-floor plans without stairs or yard work and a lower 5.5% interest rate. Nielsen Homes has been building homes across the Wasatch Front for over 45 years. They understand all stages of life and build homes to accommodate the things you need. Pair it with things you love. See their newest single-level living community in Davis and Weber County, close to golf, pickleball, and more. It's low-maintenance, luxury single-level living. No stairs, no more lawnmowers, no yard work, no waiting, and no high interest rates. Visit Nielsen Homes Communities at nilsonhomes.com. Call 385-389-1160. Online at nilsonhomes.com.
As the weather turns colder, this is when you need to get those new windows. So call Advanced Window Products. They'll replace your single-pane, rickety old windows with stylish, state-of-the-art double-pane windows with precision frames. You pick the style and color. They're custom-made right here in Salt Lake City. This company is so Utah. It's run by two guys who grew up here, Jake Weber and Utes defensive star Nate Orchard, the mayor of Sacktown with 7 NFL seasons under his belt. Great guys, great company building high-quality windows for 37 years. Unlike other companies, they build the windows, they install the windows, and they guarantee them for life. No middleman. There's Jake, Nate, and their team, and there's you, saving on the highest quality windows. Right now, before winter, get $2,000 off 10 windows or more, and they offer 60 months, 0% financing. So call Advanced Window Products now. You could have stylish new windows in 8 weeks. 801-850-9100. 801-850-9100 or visit advancedwindowsusa.com.
At Fisher Investments, our clients know we have their backs.
How do your clients know that?
Because Fisher Investments is a fiduciary, the highest standard for a financial advisor. It means we're there for our clients and always put their interests first.
So wait, you do it because you have to?
No, we do it because it's the right thing to do. Our clients trust us with their retirement savings, and we know how important that responsibility is. So we take the time to really get to know them.
Get to know them how?
We make sure we understand their unique goals, finances, health, family, and lifestyle so we can tailor their portfolio to their specific needs. Our goal is to help them achieve a comfortable retirement.
Sounds like a big responsibility. You must make big commissions then, right?
No, we don't sell commission-based products. We have one single transparent fee that's structured so we do better when our clients do better. Visit FisherInvestments.com to find out why investors like you are switching to us. Fisher Investments. Clearly different money management.
Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
Visit Serenoni Luxury Blanket Warehouse Sale Wednesday, September 6th at Orion Event Center in Linden. Save on the world's softest blankets for babies to adults. Get huge discounts on the best gifts ever.
With the 3 things you need to know this afternoon, I'm Dan Bomas. First, a rabid bat turned up at a skate park in Draper. Health authorities say you shouldn't touch a bat if you see one. Second, hikers found a body near Battle Creek Falls east of Pleasant Grove this afternoon. Third, one of the first businesses to reopen after Hurricane Idalia in Florida was a Waffle House. Right now, 72 degrees with light rain in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson. As we round out the program, I actually want to go back to a little bit of the conversation with President Camille N. Johnson. She had referenced some of the remarks and invitations from President Russell M. Nelson from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints when it comes to being peacemakers. And as we really start to gear up the political season post-Labor Day, this is an opportunity for us to really assess where we're headed and to do it a little different this time around. And the interesting thing to me as I have been thinking about this is this is not new. We've been here before. So I'm actually going to take you back to 1893, 130 years ago, 3 years before Utah became a state. So at that time, 1893, the Salt Lake Temple was completed after 40 years of sacrifice and construction. And, of course, as is customary, the dedicatory prayer was offered by Wilford Woodruff, then president of the church. And at the end of that dedicatory prayer from President Woodruff, there was a most interesting plea to heaven on a very secular issue. And sadly, it's an issue that is still a pressing problem here in the state of Utah and across the country 130 years later. So this is a direct quote. Woodruff prayed, "O God, thou seest the course thy people have been led to take in political matters. They have in many instances joined the two great national parties. Campaigns have been entered upon, elections have been held, and much party feeling has been engendered. Many things have been said and done which would have wounded the feelings of the humble and the meek, and which have been a cause of offense." So I find it absolutely fascinating that in a remote territory in the American West, President Woodruff felt the need, in a prayer of dedication on a sacred building, to address the right and wrong way to engage in political conversations. And yet here we are in 2023, and we find ourselves still wandering in the same political wilderness. Campaigns are ramping up. We'll have a primary election next week and more elections to follow after that. We'll have legislative sessions, we'll have local elections, and, of course, the 2024 presidential campaign, which will be very large and filled with a lot of heat in terms of rhetoric, which will probably reduce the listening and will probably upend a lot of rational thinking in the process. But I think it's wise for us, again, regardless of political party and regardless of religious affiliation or non-religious affiliation, to look at what Wilford Woodruff pled for 130 years ago. And I want to go to the conclusion of that particular prayer of dedication. So, again, I think it's interesting. In the middle of this prayer, he decides he needs to weigh in on political issues and how the people have joined the two great political parties. They've had elections, they've debated, they've done a lot of things that were offensive. But the conclusion is so powerful. President Woodruff concluded saying, "We beseech thee, in thine infinite mercy and goodness, to forgive thy people wherein they have sinned in this direction," talking about the way they have approached politics. And then he asks for this, which I think is a pretty good thing. He said, "Enable thy people hereafter to avoid bitterness and strife, and to refrain from words and acts in political discussions that shall create feeling and grieve the spirit." That's pretty good for 2023, even though it was offered in the prayer of dedication of the Salt Lake Temple in 1893. It's not bad advice for all of us to avoid bitterness and strife, to refrain from words and acts in political discussions that create negative feelings, harsh feelings. That's a pretty good test. And it's one that we ought to remember as we enter in what will be a pretty raucous next year plus. About 14 months to go between now and the 2024 general election, and there'll be a whole lot of things happening in between. But the test for all of us will be, what will we do? And so a few things to keep in mind in harmony with what President Wilford Woodruff said in the dedicatory prayer of the Salt Lake Temple in 1893. I think we should remember that when you speak in anger, you usually deliver the greatest speech you'll ever live to regret. And if you've had a good argument with a spouse or a loved one, you know what I'm talking about. But we do it all the time in our politics. Sadly, we have far too many people in elected office who are willing to actually listen to a countering point of view. We create these social media bubbles that just reinforce our own opinions and create those feelings of contempt that prevent us from having real discussions about real issues. So it's not about how well you can give that one-line zinger to an opponent. It's not how you can just call out the other side. The greater test is, can you be honest with your friends when they're wrong, especially when they're wrong? Can we get past just the egocentric attack back and forth that just prevents us from having real discussions? And can we look at it in just a little different way? This is not about being just passive. This is not about being a doormat. This is not about avoiding big issues or hard issues. No, America's always at its best when we are a country of big ideas, when we have open, passionate, challenging disagreements and debate. It's the way the founders set it up to be. But they didn't set it up to be filled with contempt. And that's the test for us. So a little history lesson there. 130 years ago, Wilford Woodruff got it right in terms of what we should be doing. And we should avoid bitterness and strife and refrain from words and acts in political discussions that create ill feeling. That wraps it up for us on Inside Sources today here on KSL News Radio. I am Boyd Matheson. Thanks for joining us. And as always, as you go out into the world today, make sure you see something that inspires, say something that uplifts, and do something that makes a difference.